Good evening. Look around you. The world we knew is gone. We stand now in the Indus River Valley, 5,000 years before our time, where the sun casts long shadows across streets laid out in perfect grids. The air is thick with the scent of fired brick and river silt. Behind me, you can see the precise geometry of a city that should not exist in this era. Straight roads, covered drains running beneath our feet, multi-story houses with private bathrooms and wells. This is Mohenjo-daro, one of humanity's first great cities, and it belongs to a civilization that history almost forgot. The Indus Valley Civilization, the Harappan culture. A world that stretched across more territory than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined, yet left us no deciphered texts, no monuments to kings, no evidence of warfare. Just these extraordinary cities, abandoned and silent for 3,000 years. Over the next 7 episodes, we will journey from the very beginning of this civilization. We will watch as Neolithic farmers along these riverbanks 7,000 years ago, slowly, generation by generation, transform their simple villages into something unprecedented. We will witness the birth of urban planning itself, see the construction of the Great Bath with its waterproofed walls, walk through workshops where craftsmen drill carnelian beads with tools finer than a human hair, and stand at the dockyard of Lothal as ships depart for Mesopotamian ports. We will explore how a society without apparent rulers created standardized weights and measures, how they built drainage systems more sophisticated than those in medieval Europe, and why they chose to live without palaces or temples. Then we will follow the mystery of their decline, as rivers change course, monsoons fail, and these magnificent cities are slowly, peacefully abandoned. This is not just a history lesson. This is a complete journey through time, from the first farmers to the last inhabitant who walked these streets before the silence fell. What you are about to see shaped the world we live in today. The urban planning principles born here, the craft traditions, the agricultural innovations, even possibly the religious practices, all flowed forward into later South Asian cultures, and the greatest mystery remains unsolved. Over 4,000 inscribed seals and tablets bear a script no one can read. 400 symbols holding the secrets of how this civilization governed itself, what it believed, how it saw the universe. Some of the greatest mysteries of human achievement are hidden in these stones, in these undeciphered symbols, in the question of how a society this advanced could vanish so completely from human memory. By the end of this series, you will understand not just what happened, but how an entire civilization rose without conquest, flourished without kings, and transformed into something that still lives in the DNA and traditions of millions today. If you enjoy these complete journeys through ancient civilizations, please subscribe so you do not miss our next exploration. Each week, we bring you the full story of a lost world, from its first breath to its lasting legacy. Let us begin our journey at the very beginning, 7,000 years before this city was built, when the first farmers settled along these fertile riverbanks and planted the seeds of something extraordinary. The Bolan River cuts through the Kathar Mountains where Pakistan meets Afghanistan, its waters carrying silt from highlands to the broad Indus plain below. 7,000 years before the present era, a group of hunter-gatherers descends from seasonal camps in the uplands, drawn by the promise of predictable floods and wild grasses growing thick along the riverbanks. They construct the first permanent shelters at a place that will be called Mehrgarh, simple rectangular structures of mud brick dried in the relentless sun. The settlement occupies 4 hectares initially, expanding slowly across millennia. Women grind wild barley between stone mortars, noticing how seeds fallen near dwellings sprout more reliably than those in distant fields. Within generations, deliberate cultivation begins. Wheat and barley fields spread in geometric patterns across the floodplain. The people domesticate cattle, goats, and sheep, their bones accumulating in refuse pits that will perplex archaeologists 7,000 years hence. By 6000 BCE, Mehrgar's mud brick houses stand in organized rows, their walls plastered with clay and decorated with red ochre. Compartmented storage bins hold surplus grain, the first evidence of wealth accumulation in South Asia. In one dwelling, a craftsman shapes turquoise and lapis lazuli imported from distant Afghanistan into cylindrical beads, drilling holes with flint-tipped bow drills. The precision required for this work demands steady hands and patient hours. A remarkable discovery awaits in the settlement's burial grounds. Skeletal remains reveal teeth drilled with flint tools, evidence of therapeutic dentistry practiced 9,000 years ago. The perforations, some filled with bitumen, suggest treatment of tooth decay rather than decoration. This medical sophistication emerges alongside agricultural innovation. The Potter's Quarter develops around 5,500 BCE. Clay vessels, initially crude and hand-formed, evolve into elegant shapes decorated with geometric patterns, triangles, chevrons, and intersecting lines painted in black and red. The designs will persist, transforming but recognizable through 4,000 years of continuous occupation. Copper appears in the archaeological record around 4000 BCE. Small implements, awls, pins, and simple blades represent the first metallurgy in the region. The technology arrives from the Iranian plateau, carried by traders who exchange metal for the settlement's surplus grain and precious stone beads. Bronze follows centuries later, its superior hardness revolutionizing tool-making. Along the Indus River and its tributaries, similar settlements emerge. Kot Diji rises on a limestone ridge. Amri develops near the river delta. Kalibangan establishes itself on the now-vanished Gagar-Hakra River. Each community shares pottery styles, architectural techniques, and agricultural practices, suggesting regular contact and cultural exchange. By 3300 BCE, these farming villages number in the hundreds, their population swelling beyond the capacity of kinship-based governance. The largest settlements approach urban scale, their streets beginning to follow planned alignments. Fired bricks appear, their dimensions standardized to a ratio that will define an entire civilization. 4 units long, 2 units wide, 1 unit high. The random scatter of Neolithic villages transforms into something unprecedented, the foundation of cities that will astonish the ancient world. The kilns glow red against the twilight at Kot Diji, their brick chambers reaching temperatures unknown to earlier generations. Master potters have discovered that firing clay at sustained heat transforms it into something revolutionary, a building material that resists monsoon rains, supports multiple stories, and maintains precise dimensions across thousands of units. Workers extract bricks from cooling chambers, each measuring exactly 4 finger widths long, 2 wide, 1 thick. This ratio, 4:2:1, will become the mathematical signature of an entire civilization, repeated in millions of bricks across hundreds of settlements over the next millennium. The settlement walls rise in courses of these standardized units, their surfaces smooth and uniform. Unlike the irregular mud brick of earlier villages, fired brick allows architects to envision structures of unprecedented scale and permanence. At Mohenjo-daro, builders lay out streets in rough grid patterns, the first tentative steps towards systematic urban planning. The randomness of Neolithic village layouts gives way to intentional geometry. Streets intersecting at right angles, house plots of similar dimensions, communal spaces positioned at calculated intervals. Bronze workers establish specialized quarters near the kilns, their copper-tin alloys producing tools sharper and more durable than pure copper. Axes bite deeper into timber. Chisels carve stone with precision. The technology spreads rapidly along trade routes connecting the Indus Plain to the Iranian Plateau and Central Asian highlands. Lapis lazuli from Badakhshan, turquoise from Persia, and tin from distant sources flow into emerging urban centers, exchanged for cotton textiles, carnelian beads, and surplus grain. The potter's wheel accelerates production, its spinning disc allowing craftsmen to shape dozens of vessels daily. Standardized pottery forms emerge, storage jars of specific capacities, serving bowls of uniform dimensions, water vessels with characteristic profiles. At Amri, potters develop distinctive geometric patterns painted in black on red clay, intersecting circles, fish-scale designs, pipal leaf motifs. These decorative traditions spread across the region, creating visual unity among distant communities. The first seals appear, small squares of steatite carved with animal figures and mysterious symbols. A humped bull faces right, its powerful form rendered in confident strokes. Above it, 5 marks arranged in sequence. Not decorative patterns, but deliberate signs, each distinct and repeatable. At Harappa, seal carvers develop a standardized set of symbols, their forms appearing on pottery, copper tablets, and clay tags. The script remains undeciphered, but its systematic use suggests administrative functions, marking ownership, recording transactions, identifying goods in long-distance trade. Settlement populations swell beyond kinship networks' capacity to maintain order. New forms of organization emerge, craft guilds controlling specialized production, merchant associations managing trade routes, councils coordinating construction projects. The largest proto-cities approach 10,000 inhabitants, their density requiring innovations in water supply, waste management, and food distribution. Wells penetrate deeper into aquifers. Drainage channels carry refuse beyond residential areas. Granaries store surplus harvests against seasonal scarcity. By 2600 BCE, the transformation nears completion. The scattered farming villages of the Neolithic have evolved into proto-urban centers connected by shared technologies, standardized measurements, and common symbolic systems. The stage stands prepared for the next revolution, the emergence of true cities whose sophistication will rival anything the ancient world has seen. The grid pattern, barely visible in these early settlements, awaits its full expression in the great urban centers rising along the Indus and its tributaries. The Ravi River bends southward where the floodplain spreads widest, and here, between 2600 and 2580 BCE, the greatest urban experiment in South Asia begins. Mohenjo-daro rises from deliberate vision rather than organic growth. 40,000 baked bricks laid daily by coordinated teams, following a master plan invisible to individual workers, yet evident in every perpendicular intersection. The city's grid emerges oriented precisely to cardinal directions, its main thoroughfares running north-south at 30-foot widths, secondary streets intersecting at perfect right angles. The lower town sprawls across 200 hectares, divided into residential blocks of identical proportion. Each block measures 400 by 200 feet, separated by lanes wide enough for 2 ox carts to pass. No building encroaches on public space. No structure violates the geometric order. Standardized bricks, each measuring 11 by 5, 0.5 by 2.75 inches in the sacred ratio of 4 to 2 to 1, stack into walls of uniform thickness, their fired clay resistant to monsoon rains and summer heat. Beneath the visible city, an invisible network takes form. Covered drains run along every street, their corbelled brick roofs removable for maintenance. Vertical chutes connect upper-story bathrooms to these channels, carrying wastewater towards the river. Each house possesses its own well. Some neighborhoods contain 1 well per 3 residences, their brick-lined shafts descending 40 feet into the water table. Private bathrooms feature sloped floors, directing water toward drainage outlets, a luxury unknown in contemporary Mesopotamian cities, where waste accumulates in cesspits. On the elevated citadel mound, construction begins on the structure that will define Mohenjo-daro's character. The Great Bath takes shape as a rectangle measuring 39 by 23 feet, its floor sunk 8 feet below ground level. Workers lay bricks with gypsum mortar, then seal every surface with bitumen imported from Baluchistan seeps. 2 wide staircases descend from north and south, their treads worn smooth by generations of feet. Surrounding colonnades provide changing rooms and spaces for ritual preparation. The pool's waterproofing proves so effective that 4 millennia later, archaeologists will find the bitumen still intact. No palace dominates the citadel, no temple towers above residential quarters. The largest structures serve collective functions, granaries with raised floors allowing air circulation beneath stored grain, assembly halls with rows of brick pillars, platforms for public gatherings. This absence speaks louder than monuments. Mohenjo-daro's architects design for community rather than hierarchy, for function rather than glorification. In workshops throughout the lower town, craftsmen operate within standardized systems. Stone weights follow binary progressions: 0.05, 0.1, 0.2, 0.5, 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 500 units, allowing precise measurement of trade goods. Copper scales balance carnelian beads against these calibrated stones. The unit itself, approximately 0.871 grams, remains consistent across the civilization's territory, enabling commerce between cities separated by hundreds of miles. By 2550 BCE, Mohenjo-daro's population reaches 35,000. Multi-story houses rise along major streets, their upper floors accessed by internal staircases, their courtyards providing light and ventilation. Roof terraces offer sleeping space during summer heat. The city hums with coordinated activity, brickmakers firing kilns at the periphery, potters throwing vessels on wheels, metalworkers casting bronze tools, bead makers drilling carnelian with bow-driven drills. The urban machinery functions without apparent coercion, maintained by shared standards rather than royal decree. Mohenjo-daro stands as proof that cities need not be built by kings to achieve magnificence. The carnelian workshops of Mohenjo-daro operate with precision that borders on meditation. Craftsmen select rough stones imported from Gujarat and Rajasthan, their deep red translucence judged by eye in morning light. Using copper-tipped bow drills weighted with stone flywheels, they pierce beads with holes barely wider than thread, some requiring 8 hours of continuous rotation to complete a single perforation. The drill bits, no thicker than modern needles, must be replaced every few beads. Finished products travel westward along routes established over centuries. By 2350 BCE, Indus seals appear in Mesopotamian cities 1,500 miles distant. Excavations at reveal steatite seals bearing the unicorn motif and undeciphered script in commercial contexts, warehouses, administrative buildings, merchant quarters. Akkadian texts from this period mention Meluha, a land of exotic goods, carnelian beads, ivory combs, peacock feathers, timber. The seals served as stamps of ownership or authority, pressed into clay to mark bales of cotton, jars of oil, bundles of goods moving through Bronze Age trade networks. Lothal, constructed around 2400 BCE on the Sabarmati River's ancient course, reveals the maritime dimension of this commerce. Engineers excavate a rectangular basin 214 meters long, 37 meters wide, lined with fired brick and connected to the river by a channel with sluice gates. The dockyard's eastern and western walls contain precisely measured gaps, spillways designed to manage tidal variations of nearly 4 meters. Ships built with sewn plank technology, their hulls stitched with coir rope and sealed with bitumen, could load cargo at high tide, then sail toward the Arabian Sea when waters rose again. The seal carvers of Mohenjo-daro work steatite, soft chlorite stone that hardens after firing. They incise images in reverse: short-horned bulls, elephants, rhinoceros, tigers, the enigmatic unicorn with its ceremonial feeding trough. Above each animal, they carve symbols in lines reading right to left, a script appearing on 4,000 objects across the civilization's extent, yet remaining undeciphered 3 millennia later. 400 distinct signs suggest a logosyllabic system, too many for a pure alphabet, too few for complete logographic writing. The seals measure roughly 2 centimeters square, sized to fit comfortably in a merchant's palm. Bronze workshops employ the lost wax technique with remarkable sophistication. The dancing girl of Mohenjo-daro, cast around 2300 BCE, stands 10.8 centimeters tall, her right arm heavy with bangles, left hand resting on hip in a pose of casual confidence. The sculptor modeled her in beeswax, encased the figure in clay, heated the mold until wax melted away, then poured molten bronze into the cavity. The metal, 92% copper, 8% tin, required precise temperature control and alloying knowledge transmitted through generations of metalworkers. Cotton cultivation, evidenced by textile fragments at Mohenjo-daro, dated to 2500 BCE, represents the world's earliest known cotton industry. Spindle whorls of terracotta and steatite appear in every excavated house, suggesting textile production as a household activity. The civilization exports cotton thread and woven fabric to Mesopotamia, where it appears in cuneiform records as a luxury import. Standardized weights follow a binary system in lower denominations, ratios of 0.05, 0.1, 0.2, 0.5, 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 500, then shift to decimal progression for larger measures. Cubical chert weights, polished smooth and precisely calibrated, enable commerce across vast distances. A merchant in Harappa and another in Dolavira measure grain using identical standards, their transactions governed by shared mathematical principles rather than royal authority. The trade networks function without apparent military enforcement, suggesting reputation and mutual benefit, sustained commercial relationships spanning generations. Between 2450 and 2200 BCE, the Indus world reaches its maximum geographic and economic extent. A civilization built on craft excellence, standardized systems, and the patient accumulation of technical knowledge. The morning sun angles through the doorway of a typical house in Mohenjo-daro's HRA sector, illuminating rooms where daily life unfolds with remarkable sophistication. The ground floor measures 8 meters by 6, its fired brick walls plastered smooth with mud and lime. A central courtyard admits light and air while maintaining privacy. No windows face the street. The family bathes in a dedicated room where water drains through terracotta pipes into the covered sewer below, a luxury unknown to contemporary Mesopotamian or Egyptian commoners. In the kitchen area, a woman grinds wheat on a saddle quern, the grain cultivated in fields irrigated by the Indus floods. Clay storage jars contain barley, lentils, and sesame seeds. Dried fish from the river hangs near the hearth. Evidence from Harappa's trash mounds reveals a diet including dates, melons, and possibly rice from eastern regions. Cotton seeds found at multiple sites confirm the world's earliest cultivation of this fiber. Women spin thread on clay spindles, weave fabric on horizontal looms, creating textiles that will travel to Mesopotamian markets as luxury goods. Children play with terracotta toys, miniature carts with rotating wheels, animal figurines, whistles shaped like birds. A game board carved into stone shows a pattern of squares, possibly an ancestor of Pachisi. Cubic dice made from terracotta and stone suggest games of chance. These artifacts speak of leisure time, of childhood protected from constant labor, of a society prosperous enough to craft objects purely for entertainment. The absence of palaces or monumental temples becomes increasingly significant. No residential structure dominates others dramatically. House sizes vary, but the largest remain modest compared to royal residences elsewhere. The Great Bath serves communal ritual needs, but no priestly class appears to monopolize religious authority. Terracotta figurines, a mother goddess with elaborate headdress, a seated figure in yogic posture, a horned deity surrounded by animals, suggest spiritual practices. But these objects appear in ordinary homes, not centralized temples. Jewelry adorns both men and women: carnelian and steatite beads, copper bangles, shell ornaments from coastal regions. A bronze mirror reflects a woman's face as she applies cosmetics ground from minerals. The famous bronze dancing girl statue, arms laden with bangles, one hand on hip in confident pose, captures an aesthetic sensibility valuing movement and individual expression. Evening brings families to rooftops where the day's heat dissipates. The city spreads below in geometric precision, its streets emptying as darkness falls. Oil lamps flicker in windows. Somewhere, a potter's wheel still turns, a seal carver completes one more unicorn motif. A merchant calculates tomorrow's transactions using standardized weights. Between 2200 and 2000 BCE, this civilization sustains perhaps 5 million people across its vast territory, their lives interconnected by shared standards, craft traditions, and urban planning principles that prioritize sanitation, privacy, and communal welfare over monumental displays of power, a social experiment whose egalitarian ethos remains archaeologically unprecedented. The Gagga-Hakra riverbed stretches across northwestern India around 1950 BCE, its once mighty channel reduced to scattered pools separated by expanding mudflats. Geological forces beyond human comprehension have shifted the Himalayan watershed, diverting tributaries that fed this artery of civilization. Where boats once carried grain and carnelian beads, cracked earth spreads in geometric patterns. The river that sustained dozens of settlements from Kalibangsan to Ganweriwala is dying, and with it, the foundation of urban life begins to crumble. At Dholavira, on the Kadir Island, engineers respond with desperate ingenuity between 1900 and 1850 BCE. The city's 16 massive reservoirs, carved into rock and lined with precisely fitted stone, are deepened and expanded. New channels attempt to capture every monsoon drop, every seasonal stream. The middle town's water management system becomes increasingly elaborate, with stepped wells reaching unprecedented depths. Yet the monsoons themselves are changing, their patterns shifting southward and eastward. Rainfall that once arrived predictably now comes sporadically, insufficiently. The reservoirs fill less each year, their stone-lined bottoms visible for longer periods. Mohenjo-daro's streets begin accumulating debris that earlier generations would have swept away. Between 1900 and 1800 BCE, the covered drains, once meticulously maintained, clog with silt and refuse. Some neighborhoods show hasty repairs using irregular bricks that violate the sacred 4:2:1 ratio. Houses in the lower town's eastern sectors stand empty, their doorways dark, their wells dry. The Great Bath still functions, but its surrounding structures show neglect. Pottery quality declines, with vessels made from coarser clay and fired at lower temperatures. The standardization that defined this civilization for 8 centuries begins fragmenting. Trade networks collapse inward like a dying star. By 1850 BCE, Indus seals no longer appear in Mesopotamian cities. The maritime routes connecting Lothal to the Persian Gulf fall silent. Workshops at Mohenjo-daro that once produced carnelian beads for distant markets now operate sporadically, their craftsmen migrating toward regions where rivers still flow reliably. The standardized weights, bronze cubes calibrated to binary and decimal systems, lose their universal authority as regional economies fragment. Cities that thrived on interconnection face isolation. Agricultural productivity plummets across the Indus Plain. Fields that yielded wheat and barley for millennia turn saline as irrigation without adequate drainage concentrates minerals in topsoil. Between 1850 and 1750 BCE, granaries at Harappa store diminishing harvests. The surplus that enabled craft specialization, urban density, and long-distance trade evaporates. Communities revert to subsistence farming, their populations declining, their urban amenities abandoned as unnecessary luxuries. Yet this collapse unfolds without violence. Archaeological layers reveal no destruction horizons, no burned buildings, no mass graves, no weapon caches. The Indus cities empty gradually, peacefully, as populations drift eastward toward the Ganges-Yamuna watershed, where rivers still flow and monsoons still arrive. At Kalibangan, houses are carefully sealed, valuables removed, doors closed as if residents expect to return. They never do. By 1700 BCE, Mohenjo-daro's population has declined to a fraction of its peak. The citadel stands partially occupied, but the lower town's grid-patterned streets stretch empty under relentless sun. Wind deposits sand in corners where drainage once flowed. The brick-lined wells that defined urban life reach aquifers dropping year by year. The civilization that emerged from environmental abundance now succumbs to environmental transformation, not catastrophically, but through slow, inexorable change that renders its urban experiment unsustainable. By 1300 BCE, the great cities stand abandoned. Mohenjo-daro's streets, once swept clean by municipal workers, accumulate wind-blown silt that gradually buries the lower courses of brick walls. The great bath's waterproofed floor remains intact, but its steps lead nowhere. The ritual gatherings it hosted dissolved into memory generations ago. Harappa's massive granaries stand empty. Their timber roofs collapsed, their standardized brick walls slowly eroding under monsoon rains that now fall erratically, unpredictably. The urban experiment that flourished for 8 centuries has ended, not in flames or conquest, but in silence. The people themselves do not vanish. They disperse into smaller settlements across the subcontinent, carrying technologies and traditions that persist in transformed contexts. Pottery styles evolve, but retain distinctive Harappan rim profiles and painted motifs. Agricultural techniques, wheat and barley cultivation, cattle management, irrigation methods, continue in rural villages from Gujarat to Uttar Pradesh. Craft traditions endure. Bead-making workshops in later periods use drilling techniques identical to Harappan methods, suggesting unbroken transmission of specialized knowledge across centuries of urban collapse. The script, however, dies completely. By 1500 BCE, no one carves the enigmatic symbols that once marked seals, pottery, and copper tablets. Over 4,000 inscribed objects survive, displaying approximately 400 distinct signs, yet their meaning remains locked behind undeciphered patterns. Scholars debate whether the script represents a full writing system or proto-writing, whether it records language or purely administrative data. The seals themselves, steatite squares depicting unicorns, bulls, elephants, and mysterious composite creatures, become archaeological puzzles that resist every attempt at translation. Modern excavations beginning in the 1920s slowly resurrect this lost world. British archaeologist John Marshall's teams at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro uncover grid-patterned streets that challenge assumptions about ancient urbanism. Subsequent decades bring discoveries at Dholavira, Rakhigarhi, Lothal, Kalibangan, each site adding fragments to an incomplete picture. Rakhigarhi excavations in the 2010s yield DNA evidence connecting Harappan populations directly to modern South Asian groups, particularly in northwestern India and Pakistan, confirming genetic continuity despite cultural transformation. The civilization's legacy permeates South Asian culture in ways both obvious and subtle. Urban planning principles, drainage systems, standardized measurements, grid layouts reappear in later Indian cities. Religious iconography on Harappan seals suggests proto-Shiva figures in yogic postures, possible precursors to Hindu traditions. The emphasis on ritual bathing, evident in the Great Bath, echoes through millennia in sacred river practices and temple tanks. Even the civilization's apparent egalitarianism, its lack of palaces and monumental tombs, offers alternative models for understanding social complexity without rigid hierarchies. What remains most haunting is what remains unknown: the undeciphered script guards secrets of governance, religion, literature, and daily thought. The absence of deciphered texts means Harappan voices stay forever silent. We see their cities, handle their artifacts, but never hear their stories in their own words. This civilization challenges our definitions of historical importance, proving that societies need not leave written records or monumental architecture to achieve sophisticated urban culture. The Indus people built a world of efficiency, equality, and enigma that continues fascinating researchers 3 millennia after its streets fell quiet. Thank you for journeying with us through the lost world of the Indus civilization. Subscribe to our channel to explore more ancient mysteries and forgotten empires that shaped our world.